Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talkin Guff podcast. I'm your host, Ruben Django Pouch. Yeah, my week was fine, man. Thanks for asking. Did a lot in the garden. Have a couple of new planter boxes that I'm hoping to get a load of veg into. Bought a couple of planter boxes off quickcrop.ie. I thought they were the business, and then I'm looking at them going, are they starting to belly a bit? So it remains to be seen whether or not Quick Crop are the number one, but they're still pretty effective, and I'm pretty happy with them. I had Louis doing a bit of work. I was like, look, I'll pay you $5 for an hour's work, but you gotta work, you know what I mean? And he was like, yeah. And the fucking man, he just started lamping it out of it. Like I was, what is that about men who are just like going, that's my son putting dirt into a bucket. Isn't he fucking lethal? I was just like, oh, I couldn't have been prouder. Seeing his little, just shuffling around, throwing muck around the place was deadly. One thing I noticed over in the UK, they're having protests because of a thing. They're trying to pass a bill that would make protests that have impact illegal, and also that you could be jailed for up to 10 years for severely annoying someone. Even the risk of annoying someone could have you in jail for up to 10 years. And I mean, that's a scary sort of law, isn't it? Isn't it a scary law? And I hope it's one that doesn't get any traction, and certainly doesn't decide to swim over the pond to ourselves. But I just wanted to do a bit of housekeeping on last week. Oh, hold on a minute. I watched a movie yesterday called Seaspiracy, a documentary last night called Seaspiracy, and the host or the maker of the movie was actually fairly annoying, but some of the stuff in it was mind-boggling. Like how we're destroying the oceans, not only with plastic, but with whaling and fisheries, and it's really dark and malevolent. And again, big money. Someone's making huge money. Like, that's the thing. They've found microplastics in the placenta of a human baby. Like, that's it. That's game over. Surely, as human beings, we're gone. There's plastic in your babies. And so, that's just, to me, that just seems, like I said, that's just, I look at that and I go, that's it, we're done. Human beings are done. Just start the clock. Let's get the timer out, because we're fucked. There's no going back from that. But it's like, again, it's just like, that's so obviously fucked. We don't do anything about it. And right in the middle, someone is making loads of money. So, you know, it's a thing that I keep saying. It's a thing that keeps coming up in thread. It's just like, look at the people making loads of money. Do you trust them? Speaking of which, I wanted to do a bit of housekeeping about last week. At one point last week, I said that Tony Holohan knew that women had cancer, changed their diagnosis, and didn't tell them. Now, when I listened back to the wording of how I said that, I said it wrong. As soon as I said it back, as soon as I heard the words, as soon as I watched the podcast back and I heard the words, I knew you got that wrong, Ruben. Now, the point is that he didn't know they had cancer. He knew they had the positive result for the genetic test, which could lead to cancer. They knew that. They knew that they hadn't had negative results, that in fact they'd had positive results. They changed those results without informing the victims of the situation, and at least 18 we discussed had gone on to die by 2018. And look, we discussed all that last week, but I just wanted to do a bit of housekeeping on that, because for me, the malevolence or the sort of gravitas of the malpractice does not change, but the parameters are changed, and I want to be fully transparent. I don't want to give anyone an opportunity to dismiss that fact over my wording. So I'm doing a bit of housekeeping there on that one. I also watched a thing during the week someone sent to me, and I'll try and put the link in the description of this video, but they sent me a link to a conversation had between Claire Byrne and a guy called Huey something, and I forget his name. He's an independent journalist over in, Irish guy living in Portugal, and he's anti-lockdown basically, and he's talking about the downfalls of lockdown and some really interesting points. This guy articulates in 9 minutes what I was trying to articulate for a whole 2 hours last week. So it's really interesting, worth to watch. At one point that was really, or one of the ones that stuck with me, is that the billionaires of Ireland, and I don't think there's that many of them, I might be wrong, but the billionaires of Ireland, their wealth alone has grown by 3.4 billion euro. That's how much it grew in 2020. So again, something stinks there, doesn't it? And funnily enough, old Tony Holohan, I found an article, and I have it here somewhere, and when I read it, I thought, oh, that might be ironic or something. So let me just find it for you here. Bear with me 10 seconds, if even. Come on, you day fucker. Cork bite. So, in 2012, speaking on Prime Time, Dr. Tony Holohan said he was not concerned about the safety of the pandemic vaccine, which was the vaccine used in this country for swine flu. It was a rushed vaccine. He's not concerned about the safety of the vaccination back 2 years ago, adding that it was the right decision at the time. It was critical that we got access to good vaccines as quickly as possible, Holohan said, recalling the swine flu pandemic of 2009. He noted that all other European states who bought the drug were required to sign the same deal. Deflection, save yourself. This was an unusual situation. In order to have access to this vaccine, we had to pay at the price demanded by the companies and to also accept the liability. Now that is happening at the moment. You go look into who made it. It's a beautiful company there, GlaxoSmithKline. Have a look at what they're doing around the world for the last 30 or 40 years. But this was in the journal.ie, just like adding, Holohan said he was not concerned about the safety of the vaccination back 2 years ago, adding that it was the right decision at the time. As we know, the pandemic's vaccine by GlaxoSmithKline turned out to be a fucking disaster that had seriously brain damaged, I think maybe up to 100,000 people across Europe. In this country alone, brain damaged at least 100, or in their hundreds. Not only did the company who made that vaccine make all the money off it, but they didn't have to answer for that liability. They were indemnified by European countries. That obviously cost the victims of the situation what it cost them, but it also cost this state, upwards of sort of 200 million euro, and you'll pay for that. Not Leo Varadkar with his 10% wage increase, and the rest of them fuckers, you. Just food for thought, obviously, I can no longer really ignore the elephant in the room, or the lack of someone else in the room. So the thing is, Len died. Len is dead, yeah. The prejudiced mofo that he is, and he was, look, I've known Len a while, and he was a harbinger of some serious prejudice. He was a real prejudiced motherfucker, and across all demographics. Just if you were different in any way, he just wasn't into it. So, but what you might know about Len, he was also a COVID denier as well, the fucking silly sausage. And so he was going the length and the breadth of the country on public transport with no mask and sort of rubbing his hands off everything. And he got COVID. And 25 minutes later, he died. Look, that's not true. Everything I just said is not true. Len is not dead. He doesn't have coronavirus, nor is he a bigot. So, look, I suppose that just made me feel a bit better about the situation, a little bit comic relief there. The thing about it is, and in all honesty, Len is not going to do the podcast anymore, and not through any sort of level of acrimony. We haven't fallen out, and I'd just like to say right now at the start of it, I love Len. I have a lot of respect for Len. And so there's no animosity or hard feelings on my part. I suppose I spoke to Len the other day, and just explain what he said. I spoke to Len the other day, and he just said that he was having a hard time with the podcast. He had 2 points to make. He said, number one, that he didn't feel like he was bringing very much to the table. And I, That's what he said first. He felt like he wasn't preparing enough to bring enough to the table or whatever. Let me just explain the dynamic that me and Len had originally proposed for the podcast is that we would come up with topics, either, agree on a topic. I would go off, put some structure to it, and bring it back to Len. Now, the bad side of that is that sometimes when I put so much structure on it, then that it was hard for Len to interject at the drop of a hat. And I said it a few times, I'm a real dominant asshole. But like I said, like my feelings about the situation, like I'm heartbroken in a way, I suppose. It feels like someone has broken up with me, and we discussed a lot of stuff in episode 6 that is just like so relevant at the moment. Parts of it are on a fucking loop coming back at me, and so yeah, like I said, it's a little bit heartbreaking, and with all of that comes sort of the insecurities just come floating back into the situation. It's just like, of course, Len's not doing the podcast. You're a piece of shit, Ruben. Totally unbearable. And so, like, they're the sort of things. And so I go through what he said and express the inner monologue of my insecurities at the time. So, like I was saying, he was saying that one of the points he made was that he didn't feel he was bringing enough to the table. And, and then another point he made, and I think, again, neither of these points, let me just say, the other point he made was that he felt like some of the conversations we were having and potentially some of the stuff I was saying, he wasn't comfortable with that being online, I suppose. And it's funny because we were talking about in episode 6, like, you don't love me. And that's the feeling. I just like, it's not that Len didn't love me, but he didn't love the dynamic that we were creating, I suppose. Not enough to sort of get through the anxieties. But what he said then, because it definitely in a few podcasts ago, we were talking about something that's really sensitive, and I didn't allow probably the right amount of sensitivity. I was quite heavy-handed about it. I was definitely coming in hot. And that was definitely one of the first ones where Len was a bit like, oh, Ruben, I'm not so sure about that. And I totally get that. I can totally empathise with where he's coming. Now, I wasn't trying to be malevolent or, abuse people, but I definitely was heavy-handed and coming in hot, and I can see that, and I addressed it in the next episode. But I stand over sort of stuff that I was saying. But definitely for Len, and see, here's the thing, I suppose, is that he said to me, like, take for instance that situation, Ruben. He's like, I couldn't argue with what you were saying. I had no argument for you. But that's, I think, what made him more uncomfortable, is like, because he wasn't, by not having an argument for me, he was maybe complicit, and he didn't want to be complicit in what I was saying. And rather than whatever, he decided to opt out. And I totally respect that. I totally understand that. Like I said, it's just like my insecurities are just flooding through the whole situation, because I'm like, he didn't love me. He didn't want to be in the thing. And I suppose that's my ego that's wincing a little bit, because it's like, or I don't know, but part of me is like thinking, no, in fact, I'm upset. I really enjoy doing the thing. I love the dynamic and bouncing off the lads sort of once a week. And so, yeah. So that's why I'm wincing, probably. That's why it's given a little... But I suppose... Yeah, and again, I come back to that. Well, is that your ego? If you were comfortable with yourself, like we were talking about, if you weren't insecure, if you were comfortable with yourself, you'd be like, yeah, of course, Len's just not happy with that part of it. I'm happy with it, so I'm going to keep... Whatever, I'm going to do my thing. But that's not what happens. I start to go, no, you're a fucking asshole. And funny, Len said this thing. Here's another thing as well, like, because of the dynamic and the way in which we set it up, is that then I have things to get through. And so I'm always aware of that, and sometimes I'm consumed by that. And I went watching back, I really enjoyed Len's bits and monologues, because I could get into them a bit more there, because I wasn't worrying about what's on the piece of paper in front of me. And that's a failing of mine, probably. The whole point of the dynamic, the podcast, was that we have a conversation, and yet I'm like so focused on executing this preparation. Did anyone else notice that? Like, because I would love if people commented maybe and let me know what they think. And Len said this thing in that relationship, love yourself, be the truth episode. Len said this thing, and he said, like, you know, I have this beautiful love. It's this big shining bright orb of love, and I'm trying to give it to you, and you don't want it. And I was just like, well, that's on a loop in my fucking head. And I mean, here's a weird one. I started watching pornography after Len, you know, that was one of my coping mechanisms. And I just thought that was bizarre, because obviously me and Len have the podcast, the relationship is based on our podcast, but it creates the exact same feel. I've watched more porn in the last 2 days than I did in the previous 2 months. And it's like this dejected, rejected feeling of just, I've been smoking a lot of weed. Like, look around. I'm not taking it very well. Look at the state of the place. But yeah, I mean, I think as well, like I said, I was trying at all, like, and this is the thing, I was really trying, you know, and I could see myself, like, yeah, I would like people to comment. Did you think there that, like I was saying, was I just being too much, you know? I don't know. And when I looked back at those things I was talking about, I said, was that too much? I didn't feel like it was at the time, but now Len's gone. Like I said, I wanted this to be a listen to learn exercise as well for myself. I actually think that that's maybe why they wear headphones in podcasts, so that you can really hear. You're immersed in what the other person is saying. You're immersed in the conversation. And, you know, I suppose I just have a little bit more time. Because the reality of it is I could see it happening. I'm going to smoke a joint right now as well. I'm engaging my habitual and destructive coping mechanisms. But that's, yeah, like I said, I think I could see it happening. In fact, I definitely could, because I talked about it. I was aggressive and dominant. I spoke out of turn. And here's the thing. I potentially didn't give enough space for Len's ideas, his ideologues. And I was really trying. I could see myself tell me this. Last week we did, because that's another thing, we did the episode about lockdown last week. And I maybe have some unconventional ideas about the situation. I definitely was, like Rob said after we did that podcast last week, Rob was like, oh, Jesus, man, you had a fucking hit list. I didn't know you were going to have a hit list. And so I did have a hit list, but I thought that what I was saying was valid. I was just trying to paint a picture of, are these people on my team? They don't look like they're on my team. Their history doesn't sort of suggest to me that they're on my team. Mango Hayes, man, yeah? Big shout out. You know who you are. But, and again, I'm sort of communicating, not like sort of maybe a bit far out fucking ideas, but I didn't think I was. But I'm definitely I'm being abusive or derogatory towards members of government, the Gardaí potentially, Luke O'Neill, Tony Holohan. And so maybe Len's looking at that and going, I don't want, that's you, Ruben. And like I said, I was really trying to work this week, having seen myself sort of going, because I seen it happen, didn't I? I seen myself sort of going, but that's part of who I am. But if it obviously wasn't providing enough for Len, that dynamic, I suppose. And what I was going to say even this week, I was going to put in a whole, the views and opinions of myself are not necessarily the views of Rob and Len. And I could see that maybe that's where, and it's funny, I was thinking that. And then next thing, Len's uncomfortable with the views being expressed in the thing. And I suppose it's either Len's, because he said that's it. He was saying, look, I'm just obviously not as opinionated as I thought I was, Ruben. And so I suppose the thing is that if he's not arguing with it, if he's not questioning those far ideas, if he's not communicating that the views being represented by Ruben are not my views, if he's not comfortable enough to express that, which, I can understand to a degree, then, yeah, I get it. It's just well, I'm just going to bail, actually, because this is crazy. You're a crazy person. How's the battery life doing on me thing? Yeah, hello? Yeah, we're all right. And so, like I said, I was working on it and I could see it happening a little bit more, but I just thought I had more time. I thought I could fix it or deal with it in the next sort of few episodes and make that level of comfort. Because, you know, it's important. It's a dynamic. Everyone has to feel like they're getting something out of it. It can't just be me spouting diatribe. And if Len doesn't really agree with the stuff I'm saying, then, yeah, why would he want to, why would he do it, you know? But again, it's I just feel like I've been broken up with. Even, like, I was saying to myself, but what about all the plans we were making last week? And, you know, the classic thing, which is like, I thought we were going to get a cat. So, oh yeah. I didn't know that it was over till it was too late, too late. But if I ever needed you, would you be there? Mike Skinner knew it, didn't he? Meet me at the gates, don't be late, leave now, 8:15. So, I think at this point I should mention, and I'm embarrassed, like that's the other side of it, like, I'm embarrassed to say, oh yeah, you know, how's the podcast going? And, you know when you've broken up with someone, they're just like, hey, how's the missus? Yeah, they're good, yeah, great. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I don't want to talk about the fact that they don't want to be with me anymore. And and there's that element to this, like I'm embarrassed. And so that's why I thought I'd just do the podcast, like do real shirt on sleeve shit. Who can argue with that? There's a lad just like laying himself bare. But anyway, yeah, because here's the thing. At this point, I think I should mention, in the interest of full disclosure, it's like that Rob, the producer and editor, will also no longer be part of the podcast. And I think at this, when, you know, taking that into account, we're talking about insecurities. If you take that into account, I think at this point, you just sort of like hard to think that I'm not an asshole and not just a head wrecker who was just going, and the lads are just like, oh, this turned into a chore fairly fucking quick, man. I mentioned in that in the episode about Be the Truth of Yourself that people don't like living with me, and Len starts going, oh, I'm sure that's not the case, but I'm sure, like, have you ever had to live with someone? I was just like, and you didn't even last like 12 hours, really. So again, like, that's if you want to, you know, and Rob has work obligations, and he, you know, in fairness to him, he's saying he doesn't, but in the same week, you're just sort of like, yeah, no, I get it, I just, yeah. So, like I said, it's hard to sort of stay positive about the situation in that respect. Or, you know, it's just there, it's just like going, what's wrong with you, Ruben? Are you that bad? Is it that bad? Like, people are really excited about a thing, and then the following week, he's like, what did I do? So I spent there, I suppose, like, my insecurities are at play. And Len would say it's the things that the reasons he gives. And they may be the reasons. But they may be the reasons that I'm saying as well. I suppose I'll never know in that respect. Only Len will know. But I thought I'd have a look at it and see, well, can I get on board? Like, you know, not that can I get on board with what Len's saying, because, like, we'll always be able to get on board with Len in general, but just, like, I mean, can I put my insecurities aside and have a look at it and sort of go, yeah, I just see that. Like, I tell you, right? Like, what he actually said. Like, one of his main points was that he was not adding any, and he said they're interesting conversations, they're important conversations, but he wasn't adding anything to them. These are his words now, I'm not saying, because I felt quite the opposite. At the time, like, and again, in real time, because I'm so, like, predisposed, or consumed, or concerned with the structure and making sure that the points get, and again, maybe that's my ego, because I think that's a good point, and I want to make it, and that's a good thing, and I want to discuss that, but there was times I noticed where I'd be like, let's have a discussion about this, and I'd ask a question to them, and I'd answer it myself, and then would just be sitting there going, And it didn't happen often, I don't think, but there was an element that... Did anyone else notice that? In the comments section, please put it, because I'm going to read all the comments. Did you notice that? And so, yeah, my point is when I used to look back on it, when I found it easier to really take in what Len was saying, it's just like a fucking brilliant points. And when I... So, I mean, I would have to disagree. So I suppose, yeah, that's what I'm going. It's like, I don't necessarily think Len wasn't bringing anything to the table. I think potentially I wasn't giving space for Len to bring stuff to the table, and who would enjoy that? You know, like I said again, the proposed dynamic was that I would sort of get the structure and research things to a degree, but then maybe again that just created a dynamic where I got to put forward my own biased preference, and Len didn't have the resources from a lack of preparation, not by his own fault, but by the virtue or nature of our dynamic. Then he didn't have the resources to come back at me, and I might have again, and in fact probably definitely I was just sort of promoting what I thought to be the situation. And again, I noticed this stuff. I'd only really noticed it in one or two, maybe three episodes where I'm getting really hot at stages and I'm sort of bap, 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 I'm having a hard time getting a word in edgeways. And so again, did I railroad him? You know, was he not bringing enough to the table, or in fact did I railroad him? Did I railroad the space and glory hole? I don't know. What do you people think? Comments. And another... So, I mean, again, I don't really know. I think either way, with that point he makes, I can somehow find a way to let my insecurities take over, and no matter what. But another thing, he said he would be worried about certain stuff being out there. Like he said with regards to a certain topic in a previous podcast that he couldn't argue with what I was saying, but he was uncomfortable with the fact that he didn't have an argument, and he didn't say this now, but I suppose I'm taking then that if he's not sitting there vigorously arguing what I'm saying, or at least having a conversation, debating it, then he's almost complicit, and he doesn't want that to be the situation, you know. And I understand that, like, we, again, on a certain subject, my cousin Ben, who provides the beautiful artwork that we have, he was sort of saying, look, man, I agree with what you're saying. I can't argue with what you're saying, but the way in which you're saying it could potentially land you in some hot water, or, you know, just not be the best thing for you or your podcast. And obviously me being me was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna be the truth, yo. But that's not necessarily true. And so I suppose, because he said something along the lines of the internet's a dangerous place or a weird place, he didn't trust it. And like, you know, but here's the thing, it's just like, I don't feel like a fucking total asshole. In fact, I think I'm a good enough skin. I think I have a good enough heart. I have the capacity to be an asshole. I have been an asshole in the past at times. But in general, like, I think I have empathy, and I'm trying my best to use that empathy to gauge what I believe to be a righteous path for me to walk, and walk it. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying my fucking best. And when then, you know, I just think, is it that bad? Is some of the stuff that bad? You know, when I get it, I'm loud, gregarious, potentially heavy-handed and insensitive, crass, all that. But I'm not trying to hurt people, and everything I say, I like to think that I've put some thought into it. And again, I'm working off the idea that if something's funny, potentially funny, I'm going to try and get a laugh out of it. And if something is bullshit, you know, I'm going to fucking call it out as bullshit. And you can call me out as well, that's fine, because I'm full of shit, alright, I get it. So, you know, my whole point is, I suppose, like, what do I give a fuck? You know, what's anyone going to do to me? I ain't got nothing to lose. But again, comments in the comments section, the whole thing. And like when, like, yeah. I think it's, part of me then is like, if Len liked the thing, and he didn't disagree with what was being said, but he was just uncomfortable about now, I'm not saying that this is what it is, his thought process. I'm just saying, if he's just uncomfortable about a potential backlash from stuff that maybe he isn't even saying, that I'm saying, like, that's a shit buzz as well, isn't it? And we spoke about this sort of the left-right thing, the death of the age of conversation. And like, whoa. Like, there it is in practice almost. And I might have pushed it a bit too far, pushed Len too far, pushed certain subjects too far. But really quickly, after 8 weeks, he just didn't want to do it. And I'm not having a go at Len. More, I'm having a go at the social climate that, you know, he's worried about the endeavours he has been putting effort into for a while and damaging those endeavours. And again, like, we're not fucking Nazi sympathisers or you know what I mean? We're just talking guff about certain stuff, and some of it's maybe easier to get on board with it, and some of it's not, but it's not coming from sort of some malevolent place of, it's just, you know, I think that's bullshit, let's talk about that. And again, yeah, it's not, you know, it's sad that that's the way it has to be. I'm going to keep going with the podcast. That's the plan. I really enjoy doing it. It's almost like, because again, I was spouting on there on episode 6, I think, about be the truth, love yourself, and cast aside your personal insecurities and learn to love yourself, otherwise you will project those insecurities onto situations and fuck them up. And here it is, in practice. A relationship has just ended in front of your very eyes. And now again, not like, me and Len will still be buds, but like, we've gone from being a team, I suppose, to me being on my own. I don't even have the producer guy talking shit. I'm actually looking at myself in the camera here. And I have to sort of just, and that's my whole point, is like, I gotta get comfortable with myself. I gotta be happy enough that Len had his reasons for bailing on, or for wanting to opt out of doing the podcast in the future, and that I'll just keep doing my thing. Here it is in action. I'm having to exercise my own shy talking from episode 6. It's like, love yourself, Ruben. Don't let the insecurities of the situation come in and crowd it and destroy it. Love yourself and come out of it and keep going. And so that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep going with the podcast because I really enjoy it. Obviously, this, whatever, it's maybe not as enjoyable for the people watching it, if it's even enjoyable for anyone who watches it, if even anyone watches it. And so, well, in fact, where did I actually wrote that? Okay, well, funnily enough, what gave it a little bit of it, made it a little bit bittersweet as well, is that on episode 7 and episode 8, we got sort of like our first comments, and one was, I can't remember, a person we didn't even know, not just like our mum telling us, "You're great, lads." It was a stranger, I think, saying, "Great stuff, lads, keep them coming." And then a friend of mine and ours, Gav McKay, big shout out to the Bull, he commented, "Great stuff, lads, watched every episode so far, keep them coming." And now I'm thinking, yeah, this is fun. And then on the next day, pretty much it's like going, "Yeah, look, Ruben, you're going to do it on your own from now on." And so, again, it's not that I'm not, if anything, you know, it's like, here we are. Like I said, I have to take my own advice and do it in action here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep going. Obviously, I think we need to change the dynamic a little bit, because I'm going to keep doing the hosting on my own, because I don't want to get into another situation where I alienate yet another person with my gregarious control freak behaviour. And so I'm going to try and change up the format a little bit, and we're going to maybe start getting guests in. It was something I'd always wanted to do, just to change it up, keep it fresh, keep it funky. So I'm going to start getting guests in, I suppose. If you think you would be an appropriate guest, slide right in my DMs, yeah. I'm going to start putting out the feelers. Gonna maybe do some talking heads, like not the band, the actual things around Bray, because that could be good crack, a little bit of comic relief. We get the interjections of Bray folk, Main Street proletarians. I think that'd be good. And so, yeah, I'm looking, I suppose, for an editor / producer. I'm not looking for a co-host, but we're looking for guests, and we're looking for an editor / producer, someone who can be here on the day, doing the technical ones and twos, the camera, microphone, pulling stuff up on the big screen, and then who can take all the information and edit it. That's what we're looking for. Now, the pay is nothing. You get paid nothing to do this, but you get an equal share in nothing. You can have 50% of my nothing, and maybe one day it becomes something, and you own 50% of it. You know what I mean? We do it for the laugh. Like, what the fuck else are we doing? We're in the middle of a pandemic. It's depressing as hell. You may as well come and talk shit or guff once a week for an hour or so. So comment if you would like to be a guest, an editor, a producer, anything like that. Or you just want to maybe give me, you know, a little bit of props, massage my ego a bit, because I'm hurting. I'm tender right now. That would also be a goer. One thing I've noticed, and we're going to wrap it up now, actually, pretty much. This is going to be a short one because it's probably a bit depressing to watch it, so we're just going to wrap it up soon enough. I suppose, oh yeah, because I keep, like, we actually on average get about 100 views on this podcast, and I think probably half of them are me and my mum, but no, that's not true. My mum won't even watch the podcast. She thinks you talk about some, I mean, and I'm glad, because we say rude stuff, you know. It's juvenile at times, but yeah, I reckon we get about 100 people watch it on average every week, and that somehow we've only got 24 subscribers. So I'm just going through the maths in my head and going, either people watch it, like it, don't like it, and don't subscribe, fair enough, or they watch it, don't like it, and therefore don't subscribe. So in order to remedy this situation and give me more clarity of data, what I would like people to do is, if you watch it and you like it, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you've already subscribed and watching the video and you like it, please like it. Hit the little notification bell. Just as importantly, if you watch it and you don't like it, give it a thumbs down and tell me you don't like it, because at least that way I get some sort of idea as to what's happening, you know. Just to wrap it up, what's that saying? Just to wrap it up, obviously Rob and Len are no more. I wish the lads all the best. They're my friends, so I'm going to see them all the time anyway. I totally understand where they're coming from. As sad as I am that I won't see them every week and do the podcast with them every week, that's my sadness, and I will deal with that. And I am eternally grateful for the 8 weeks we had together and all of the stuff that I've done with, you know, all of the, you know, I'm eternally grateful for my relationship with them and the creative endeavours that I have got to enjoy with them. And so, always, for Rob and Len, big peace, big love, big respect. There mightn't be a podcast next week. There mightn't even be one the week after that, but hopefully there will definitely be one after that. Sorry, I was just trying to find something. Forget it. Look, that's it. It's been emotional. I'll see you soon as is humanly possible. And I'll catch you all pieces on the flip-flop.
and the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal to begin the morning. A screw was bawling, get up, you bowsy, and clean up your cell. And the old triangle went jingle